When it comes to UFC fighters known for knockouts, aggression, and street fights, one man comes to mind: Chuck Liddell.
Chuck Liddell in his prime was a fucking monster.
Yeah.
He's the former UFC light heavyweight champion, has the most KOs in the division's history, and has the longest KO winning streak in the entire UFC. So when it comes to knocking people out with his hands, Chuck Liddell is literally one of the very best in the world. Yet, whether it's a group of Navy SEALs, regular dudes with road rage, or that infamous London bar crawl involving Tito Ortiz and Lee Murray, people have decided it was a good idea to test themselves against the Iceman. And spoiler alert, it was quite the opposite of a good idea.
When you're in a street fight and you have a choice and Chuck Liddell was there, I don't care who else is there, you follow Chuck Liddell.
So these are the times when strangers thought they could fight Chuck Liddell. It's to this day the most infamous street fight in UFC history, and it goes all the way back to 2002. The UFC held their first event on UK soil, with the event ironically named Brawl at the Hall, but after the event, the brawl took to the streets of London. Now, most fans will know the tale of Lee Murray being heavily rumored to knock out the then light heavyweight champion Tito Ortiz in a brawl. The story goes that one of Ortiz's friends was play fighting with Pat Miletich outside a nightclub, but someone in Lee Murray's group thought it was an actual attack, so decided to intervene.
Somebody was on Pat's back and kind of like playing with him, choking. I guess somebody took it the wrong way. It was a friend of Tito's that was on his back doing that. Somebody took it the wrong way, came up, cold cocked him. He went down. Taxi cab ran over his arm, and all hell started to break loose.
Damn.
Then one of Lee Murray's friends, who funnily enough was involved in the infamous bank heist, thought it was a real situation. And if you know Lee Murray and the people he kept company with, they didn't stop the fight peacefully. They escalated it and apparently knocked the guy out for good measure.
What the F are you doing trying to choke my coach? And right when Bo wanted to say something back to him, Paul, Lee Murray's buddy, Paul was the one that was one of the guys in part of the so-called biggest bank heist in world history. Paul, out of nowhere, who's a big dude, with a running start, blasted Bo with the right hand and launched him. And the alley blew up into a huge fight.
Ortiz saw his friend separated from consciousness, and then all hell broke loose. Punches were flying, people were dropping, and Lee Murray floored Tito Ortiz.
Tito got knocked out fair and square. He went after Lee. Lee knocked his ass out and kicked him in the head a couple times, and I saved Tito's ass by telling Lee to stop.
Murray allegedly put Ortiz down with a 5-punch combination and continued to soccer kick him on the floor. Of course, Ortiz denies it, but more of the eyewitnesses echo what Murray said went down. But what often gets overlooked in the story is Chuck Liddell's involvement. He claimed he ran in to protect a friend who was being attacked by 3 men, but once he was in the street fight, he didn't mind getting involved. Chuck had his back against the wall and was apparently KOing anyone who dared to step into the punching range with him.
And it was like watching a movie. I mean, Chuck's just throwing punches and people are just dropping. He's like, bam, bam, hammer fist down, boom, 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 just walking through the crowd, right? It was just one of those nights, you know? Things happen.
His rule was, if I don't know you, I drop you.
I wasn't as high as 7 or 8, but I mean, I know how to fight in groups. I mean, big brawls. I grew up fighting a lot, and you know, I know how to fight, and I hit hard, so.
According to him, he knocked out half a dozen men, but other fighters who watched on said the number was far, far higher.
Chuck Liddell will tell you exactly the same story. He was there knocking people out left and right, trying to save his own ass because he had people coming after him. So
imagine those regular club goers in the early hours of the morning who decided to get involved in the brawl, just to be in the midst of 5 or 6 UFC fighters going at it and ending up face to face with one of the most devastating knockout artists in UFC history. There's being in the wrong place and at the wrong time, and then there's that. And while that is undoubtedly the most notorious street fight of any UFC fighter, here's another Chuck Liddell fight you've probably never heard of. Before we get to that though, a quick word from our partners DraftKings Sportsbook, because with UFC 319 on the horizon, now is the perfect time to get involved. Whether you think Chimaev is going to blitz his way to the title or DDP will drag him into deep waters, there is nothing more satisfying than calling your prediction and reaping the rewards. Because of that, DraftKings Sportsbook is offering new customers a $200 bonus after they bet their first $5. Yes, that's a $200 bonus for just $5. Don't miss out on all the action at UFC 319 and DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code MARKFIGHTING and bet just $5 on any wager and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code MARKFIGHTING only at DraftKings Sportsbook. It all started when Chuck Liddell pulled up to a red light and saw 3 guys attacking just one man.
One time I was in slow and I'm driving down the street, and I pulled up to a red light right by Tortilla Flats, and there was a red light, and I saw these 3 guys beating up this guy on the ground, and I just put my car in park, got out, ran over.
We don't know the backstory behind why the initial fight started, but we do know what Chuck Liddell did, and as you can imagine, it didn't end well for the 3 men.
Kicked the guy off, and I had one guy held on top of the other guy, holding the guy down. He had his arm behind his back, and then this guy came running up, and I just kicked him. Oh, wow. Upkick on. I just bang, got him right in his hand, out. Just go to sleep. But I did quite a few fights like that. It was a lot of fun out there.
Those 3 guys just thought they were going to beat up one poor guy and carry on with their day, but they ended up having to fight a UFC champion and Hall of Famer instead. For most people, a street fight would be an incredibly memorable thing. Whether it went well, bad, or indifferently, it's not something that would be easily forgotten. But for Chuck, well, he's had so many that he can't even remember them all.
I was watching another podcast you did, and there was a dude who was kind of describing a scenario where he was outside a club with you, and some guy said or did something to you, and you just kind of like walked over, and he didn't actually specify what you did, but it seemed like he was saying that you knocked him out, and then you had to like rush over to him and be like, yo, we gotta get Uber, we gotta get out of here.
And after being told of a time he knocked someone out outside a club, Liddell wasn't sure if it actually happened or not.
If that happened, I mean, usually there's lines. Everyone's got lines and lines across it.
Right.
Like, there was no other option. If that happened, I don't know that some guys remember stories a lot different than they happen, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
I mean, for the most part, it's few and far between when I've thrown a punch outside of the cage after I was fighting.
But while he was fighting, it might have been a different story, just like the time he was working as a bouncer and had a run-in with a big group of Navy SEALs. It went down in Hawaii, where Chuck and his entire fight team were out there, with some of them working as bouncers, and involved was Gan McGee, a former UFC heavyweight title challenger who went by the nickname The Giant, and for good reason.
Fighting with like a bunch of Navy SEALs.
Yeah, that happened a long time ago. People ask that all the time. I mean, for me, I wasn't involved in most of it. The first time they came in, all the guys that trained with me that are normally working at that bar were in Hawaii with us, because we all went to Hawaii for our whole fight team went. And Gan McGee was still there. He was 6'10", almost 300 pounds, and he fought for a UFC world title at one point.
And it turns out that whatever happened, the SEALs got away with it.
He got cut. I got cut over his eye. He got cut somewhere on his face, I think. And then a couple of his buddies really pissed off, and everyone was mad about it.
After kind of winning the first exchange and being able to escape, you'd think the Navy SEALs would have left it there. I mean, they just had a scuffle with a group of UFC fighters and got away pretty much unscathed. But we know Navy SEALs are as tough as they come, and probably thought they could handle themselves if the situation was to escalate again. So just 2 weekends later, they came back to the very same bar. But this time, the UFC fighters were more than ready.
When I showed up, they had one of my buddies had a guy pinned. The only thing I did was I ran over. This guy was hitting my buddy when he had the guy started hitting my buddy that had him pinned. I ran over and head snapped the guy, bounced his face off the ground.
So what does head snap?
Yeah, what is
that?
Just
grab his head, just move back and pull his head down and slapped his head off. His head went off the ground. He went out.
Chuck literally grabbed a guy's head and smashed it face first into the ground. That's gotta be a broken nose, concussion, and probably a whole lot more. Thinking you're tougher than a group of heavyweight and light heavyweight UFC fighters was a grave mistake from those Navy SEALs who learned their lesson the hard way. But in that very same interview, Steve-O, who was around MMA circles at the time, thought Chuck was more of the type to calmly submit someone in a street fight versus violently KO them. And that's where Liddell explained that much earlier in his youth, he tried the wrestling approach, but it backfired massively.
You strike me as more of a put him in a like choke him out and then lay him down nice and soft.
Just like that was the next guy.
Typically that would I don't once it goes to throwing punches, I don't do that. I did that one time in college and got kicked in the face while I was doing it. Like never again. So once a bunch of people are throwing punches, I try to keep my hands free.
From that day in college and on, if hands were getting thrown, Chuck Liddell wasn't thinking about wrestling, just straight up knocking people out. But those fighting roots weren't God-given to Chuck. As a young kid, he was explicitly told not to fight under any circumstances.
Your mom told a story about you being at daycare as a young boy, and somebody was picking on you, bullying you, maybe even hitting you, and you stood there with your hands by your side, your fist balled up, your hands by your side, and the daycare teacher was like, "Why are you not fighting back?"
As a kid, Chuck was boisterous, played every sport possible, super active, so to not stand up for himself seemed way out of character. But he didn't have a choice. He was told he couldn't.
My mom told me I wasn't allowed to fight. I wasn't allowed to hit anybody, so, I wouldn't do it. I mean, as my mom said I can't, so I guess I'll just sit here and take it. But it happened a few times, and he finally called my mom and talked to her and said, "You got to let him defend himself. We can't be there every time something's happening."
So after Chuck's mother was told she needed to let her son defend herself, she gave it the green light. After all, the bullying wasn't going to miraculously disappear overnight. So Liddell was taken to his grandfather, who taught him a thing or two, and the young bully now had a problem on his hands.
So she took me to my grandfather and had him teach me some straight punches and started throwing punches, and as far as defending myself, the rest is history.
I think you've done well.
Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more times UFC fighters fought strangers, go hit subscribe because we have a whole lot more like this lined up.